Dust chokes the air in an Oregon outpost, 1869, where pine sap and tobacco sting the lungs. On a rickety stage of nailed crates, Clara Wren stands, a burlap sack tied tight over her face, her breath quick, ragged, betraying fear she won't show. Her dress, thin as a whisper, clings to her curves, damp with sweat, outlining the swell of her hips, a bead of moisture tracing the soft dip of her throat before vanishing beneath the sack's frayed hem. The crowd of men, eyes hard and hungry, jeers, which one spits, tobacco juice splattering the dirt. $2 for a corpse, another laughs, their voices raw with lust and scorn, a filthy tide of greed. Then boots crunch through the mob. Caleb Holt, broad shoulders straining his worn coat, steps forward, his face shadowed by a black hat. His hands, rough from years felling timber, flex with purpose. $2, he says, voice low like a blade cutting wind. The auctioneer blinks, caught off guard. You ain't seen her face, mister. Caleb's gaze locks on Clara, her body still but alive, trembling under his stare. I'm marrying a woman, not a face, he says, each word heavy, final. Silence falls, sharp as a drawn gun. Clara whispers. Clara Wren, her voice soft, familiar, stirring a memory in Caleb, a snowbound cave, a fire's glow, a woman who saved him. His pulse races, desire and danger coiling tight. Has he just bound himself to a ghost from his past? If this tale of fire and redemption pulls you in, drop a like, tell us where you're writing from in the comments, and subscribe. Hit the bell to catch the next trail. Caleb Hall leads Clara Wren through a trail of crushed pine needles, the forest folding around them, muffling the outpost's cruel laughter. Her hands, bound by frayed twine, clutch the rope, the burlap sack tied loose at her neck, its thin weave shifting with each breath, revealing glimpses of her chin, her lips trembling but firm. The sack's hem, ragged and worn, lets her steal glances at the ground. Her bare feet stepping sure despite the shadow over her face. Her dress, faded and clinging, traces the curve of her hips, swaying with each step, pulling Caleb's gaze before he snaps his eyes to the path, jaw tight. The old mule plots behind, sacks of flour and salt rattling softly. The cabin rises ahead, dark pine walls braced against a rocky rise, a rusted horseshoe nailed above the doorframe. Caleb pushes the door open, hinges groaning like a buried secret. You stand where you choose, he says, voice rough as split timber. No one's placing you now. Clara steps inside slow, her fingers grazing the smooth floor as she crouches by the far wall, knees drawn up, the sack fluttering faintly. Caleb moves to the stove, iron clanking, water simmering, the air warming with smoked meat and a faint bite of cinnamon. He sets a wooden bowl near her, steam curling upward, and steps back, giving her space. He doesn't ask, doesn't push, just watches the fire, its glow steady. Clara's breath steadies, her fingers loosening on the twine. She lifts the sack's frayed edge just enough to see the bowl, her movements practiced, as if she's learned to live half-hidden. What's this? She asks, voice soft but clear through the thin burlap. Caleb stirs his own bowl, eyes tracing the table's grain. Meal for the last one standing, he says. Cooked it after long days in the woods. Always set 2 bowls, even when no one came. Clara tilts her head, the sack shifting, a lock of dark hair slipping free, brushing the soft curve of her jaw, kissed by the firelight. Why 2? She asks, a whisper that cuts deep. Caleb's grip tightens on the spoon, knuckles whitening. For my wife, he says, voice low, cracked. After the war, for coming home alive, now for you. A sound escapes her, sharp, almost a laugh, swallowed quick. She lifts the sack's hem higher, her slender fingers guiding the spoon beneath, each bite slow, deliberate, as if tasting trust itself. Caleb keeps his eyes on the fire, but her presence fills the room, heavy, alive. That snowbound cave lingers in his mind, her voice, her hands, the fire she kept burning. He wants to ask if it's her, if she's the one who saved him, but the words catch in his throat. She's a stranger bought for $2. Yet her voice hums like a song he's carried for years. Outside the river murmurs, the forest still. Clara sets the bowl down, her hands folding tight, the sack settling back over her face. "You don't know me," she says, voice sharp now, a wall rising. Caleb leans forward, elbows on knees, firelight carving shadows across his face. "Don't need to," he says steady, "not yet." But her breath hitches, a fear unspoken, her body curling tighter, the sack a shield against his gaze. Caleb's chest aches, a pull he hasn't felt since his wife's laughter warmed these walls. He stands, steps into the night, the cold biting his skin. The stars burn bright, unyielding. He's bound to her now, a woman whose voice stirs ghosts. But what shadows does she carry? And why does his heart sworn to another stir for her? Spring weaves through the Oregon pines, wild flowers spiking the air with faint sweetness. Clara Wren moves with quiet grace now, her steps sure, the burlap sack tied loose at her neck. Its thin weave shifting with each breath, the frayed hem letting her steal glances at the earth. She works beside Caleb Hall, her hands deaf, guiding needle through his torn shirt, stitching by feel, her fingers scarred but steady. Her arms flex, smooth under the sun's heat, a bead of sweat tracing the curve of her wrist, pooling at her elbow. Caleb swings his axe, wood splintering, each crack a fight to bury the heat. Her nearness stirs. His wife's vow chains him, a promise carved in loss, but Clara's presence burns, a hunger he can't shake. One evening, storm clouds bruise the sky, the air thick with rain's promise. Caleb finds Clara by the river fetching water, her fingers nimbly loosening the sacks not to see the bucket's edge. She hums, "Oh, Shenandoah," the melody low, haunting, slipping through the burlap's weave, cutting Caleb like a blade, dragging him back to a snowbound cave where her voice kept him alive. She bends to dip the bucket, her dress pulling tight, the fabric outlining the full curve of her breasts, trusting low as she leans heavy and soft, stirring a raw ache in Caleb's gut. He clenches his fists, his breath shallow, fighting the urge to look, to want. She turns, sensing him, and the bucket slips, water splashing, soaking her dress. The cotton clings to her thighs, white and ripe under the damp cloth, glistening in the fading light, each curve a taunt to his restraint. Her breath quickens, the sack fluttering, revealing the soft line of her jaw, lips parted, trembling. "Clara," he rasps, voice thick, a growl of need he can't hide. She freezes, fingers tightening on the bucket, knuckles pale. The river hums, the only sound between them. Caleb steps closer, boots sinking into the mud, his pulse hammering, a wild thing caged too long. He's alone, has been for years, and her body, those thighs, those breasts, pulls at him, raw, unyielding. His hand lifts, trembling, brushing the sack's edge, grazing the warm skin of her neck, her pulse racing under his calloused fingers. She gasps soft, a sound that sends fire through his veins. He leans in close enough to smell pine and river on her skin, her breath hot, ragged. Her head tilts, the sack slipping higher, her lips inches from his, full parted, begging to be tasted. Caleb's hand moves, bold now, sliding down her shoulder, fingers grazing the damp cotton, tracing the swell of her breast. Stopping just shy of slipping beneath, her chest heaves, pressing against his touch, her body arching, a silent plea. He growls low, wanting to rip the sack away, to see her, to claim her, but the vow to his wife screams in his skull. He pulls her closer, their bodies brushing, his thigh pressing against hers, firm, warm, the friction electric. Her hands grip his coat, fingers digging in, her breath a shudder against his jaw. He tilts her chin, lips hovering over hers, so close he feels their heat, tastes her air, the world shrinking to the pull between them. A bowstring stretched to breaking. A sharp crack splits the night. A branch, snapping in the pines, too close, too deliberate. Caleb jerks back, hand dropping, desire curdling to ice. Clara stumbles, tugging the sack down, her breath jagged, the moment shattered. The forest stills, the river drowned by distant hoof beat at. Caleb's hand finds the knife at his belt, eyes scanning the trees. Someone's out there, he says, voice hard low. Clara grips the bucket, her body tense, the sack snapped back into place, a shield against the world. Hoofbeats grow louder, a shadow breaking through the pines. Jasper Kane, bounty hunter, steps into view, duster torn, eyes sharp as a blade. Looking for work, Hull, he says, but his gaze rakes Clara, lingering on the damp dress, the hidden face. Heard you got a new wife? Caleb steps between them, stance wide, shielding her. Ain't your concern, he growls, each word a bullet. Jasper smirks, fingers brushing his pistol. Might be, he says, voice smooth, venomous. Talk's going round about a girl with a scar running from blood. Clara's hand grazes Caleb's arm, trembling, a fleeting anchor. The air crackles, storm clouds rolling closer. Jasper turns, melting into the trees, but his words tighten like a noose. Caleb looks at Clara, her form rigid under the sack, and feels her secrets clawing free. What blood stains her past, and can he stand against a man like Cain when his own heart's already breaking? The forest hums with danger, the river's song drowned by the echo of Jasper Kane's hoof beat-hats. Caleb Holt stands rigid, his hand on the knife. Clara Wren behind him, her breath sharp through the burlap sack. Its thin weave fluttering, tied loose at her neck to let her see the ground. Her fingers grip his arm, trembling, but firm. The damp cotton of her dress still clinging to her thighs from the river. Jasper's words, a girl with a scar running from blood, hang heavy, a noose tightening around them both. Caleb's eyes scan the pines, his heart pounding, torn between the vow to his wife and the woman he's bound to now. Clara tugs the sack's hem, adjusting it with practiced ease, her gaze darting through the frayed edge. Alert, alive, back to the cabin, Caleb says, voice low, urgent. He pulls her along, the trail narrowing, branches clawing at their clothes. Clara keeps pace, her steps quick, the sack shifting as she ducks under a low bough, her waist bending, the curve of her back smooth and taut under the thin dress, a fleeting silhouette that stirs Caleb's blood despite the danger. He curses himself, the ache for her, a betrayal of his oath. They reach the cabin, the door slamming shut, but the air feels wrong, too still. Caleb bars the door, his hands swift, then turns to Clara. Tell me, he says, voice hard, what's he chasing you for? Clara hesitates, her fingers tightening on the sack's knot. I killed a man, she says, voice steady but low, muffled through the burlap's weave. Back in Missouri, he attacked me, tore my face. I fought back, didn't mean to end him. Her words spill raw, a confession she's carried too long. Caleb's jaw tightens, his mind flashing to the cave, her hands saving him, not killing. You're no murderer, he says, but doubt flickers. Can he trust her? A thud shakes the cabin door, heavy, deliberate. Caleb grabs his rifle, shoving Clara behind him. Stay low, he growls. The door splinters and Jasper Kane kicks it open, pistol drawn, eyes gleaming with hunger. Time's up, Hull, he says, stepping inside, boots grinding dust into the floor. Hand her over or I burn this place down. Clara's breath catches, her hand brushing Caleb's back, a touch that steadies him. He raises the rifle, steady, but Jasper's faster, his pistol cracking. The bullet grazes Caleb's arm, blood seeping through his sleeve. Clara gasps, lunging forward, her hands fumbling to tear a strip from her dress, pressing it to his wound, her fingers trembling, but sure. Caleb shoves her back, firing at Jasper, the shot splintering the wall. Jasper ducks, laughing, a predator's grin. She's worth more dead, he taunts, aiming again. Clara moves quick, grabbing a fire iron from the hearth. She swings, the iron grazing Jasper's shoulder, forcing him back. Run. Caleb shouts, but Clara stands firm, the sack slipping, revealing her scar, a jagged line across her cheek, raw, defiant. Jasper freezes, recognition flashing in his eyes. You, he snarls, stepping closer. I knew your face. Caleb tackles Jasper, the two men crashing to the floor, fists and blood flying. Clara scrambles for the rifle, her hands shaking, adjusting the sack to see through its hem. She aims but hesitates, her breath ragged. Caleb pins Jasper, knife at his throat, but Jasper laughs low, vicious. Ask her about the man she killed, he says, voice dripping venom. He was my brother. The words hit like a bullet. Clara's hands dropping the rifle, her body trembling. Caleb freezes, his knife still, eyes darting to Clara. Her scar, now bare, tells a story he doesn't know. Did she lie? Is she the killer, Jasper claims, or the woman who saved him in the snow? The cabin grows still, the truth hanging like smoke, ready to choke them all. The cabin air chokes with dust and blood. Jasper Kane pinned beneath Caleb Holt's knife. His words, my brother, still burning. Clara Wren stands frozen, the burlap sack loose at her neck, its thin weave slipping, her scar bared, a jagged truth across her cheek. Her breath shakes, eyes glinting through the sack's frayed hem. I didn't lie, she whispers, voice raw, steady. He attacked me, I fought to live. Caleb's grip falters, his eyes searching hers, seeing the woman who saved him in the snow. Not a killer. Jasper laughs, bitter, lunging for his pistol. Caleb drives the knife down, not to kill, but to disarm, the blade pinning Jasper's sleeve to the floor. Enough! Caleb growls, binding Jasper's wrists with Clara's own twine. Days later, the outpost buzzes with whispers. Eleanor Tate, a cook from Clara's past, steps forward, her voice trembling but clear, swearing Clara's innocence before Sheriff Amos Reed. She fought for her life. Eleanor says, her word cutting through years of lies. The warrant lifts, the noose of Clara's past unravels. She stands by the cabin, the sack now a folded cloth in her hands, thrummed with purple flowers and a single pine sprig. She stitched herself. Caleb watches, his chest tight, the vow to his wife fading like egg. Shadow under dawn, he steps closer, his hand brushing hers, warm, steady, no longer forbidden. Clara's lips part, a soft smile breaking through, her scar catching the light, no longer a shame, but a mark of survival. They wed under a pine canopy, Clara's dress simple, her veil the burlap reborn. Stitched with her own hand, the river hums, the forest soft with spring. They plant a small pine by the cabin, its roots a promise of new beginnings. As the sun dips, Clara's hand rests in Caleb's, her fingers tracing his calluses, their scars entwined. The path ahead stretches, not without shadows, but together they walk it redeemed. If this tale of love and redemption stirs your heart, drop a like. Tell us where you're riding from in the comments and subscribe. A super thanks keeps these trails alive. Hit the bell for the next story.